Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good Tuesday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 30th of May, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. No matter what part of Alaska you're in, you can call 1-800-472-0391 and find out your forecast over the phone just by punching in a couple numbers there. All of our weather information is always online at weather.gov/Alaska, and if you haven't looked at the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit's webpage lately, now would be a really good time, as new changes are coming your way and a new page is going to be rolling out very soon. It's active now, but it will replace what you're used to at the old Weather Service site. So weather.gov/Alaska is a great place to start. Click on the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit and follow the link there to check out the new page. And if something doesn't work just right, or you just don't like what you see, please let us know, because we are still tinkering with it and making that work for your needs, as it serves all of Alaska and helps to keep general aviation safe. Anytime that you have a question about the show, got a question, comment, concern, or just want to say, hey, I really don't like your tie, Dave, fine, that's okay, I can take it. David.Snider@noaa.gov is a great place to reach me there. On to the show. Breakup. Well, we know it mushed out in the lower 2/3 of the state, but the North Slope now is pretty much done as well. So we will not be looking at the Alaska breakup map anymore after this. As always, you can get the very latest river forecast information for your area at Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center's website, weather.gov/APRFC. That's Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center for short. Again, you can find that from Alaska's Weather Service page as well. Fire danger has been pretty modest so far this season. It has been kind of a stretch of dry weather in the last month or so, but in the last weekend or so, we've had some wetter air in place. So we really haven't had any sizable fire danger or any big round of thunderstorms across the region. Now, of course, we're moving into the hotter, more unstable part of the year, so signs will probably lean toward more of that higher fire danger. But once again, it's been pretty modest, so we'll take what we can get here. But you'll notice there is kind of a band of drier air, or drier conditions, let's say, drier brush is the better way to say that, northern sections of the Alaska Range on the eastern side, and also around the Copper River Basin. Again, fairly modest, but it's present, and a sign that it probably wouldn't take a whole lot to get this going if we go through a stretch of drier weather for a while, or get some very active thunderstorm activity. In the meantime, not really seeing that too much on today's chart. You can see that broad area of low pressure out across the western Bering Sea, sweeping in a southern push of moisture, working its way up toward the Pribilofs in the central and eastern chain. There has been a band of showers that developed working through the middle Tanana Valley this afternoon. As of late this afternoon, there was not thunderstorm activity with that, but there was a strike across the northern Yukon Delta around the 3:30, 4 o'clock hour or so, just north of Bethel and north and east of Ammonag. So that was something that had just been developing. Most of the storm activity that we saw today was out across the Yukon and into the Northwest Territories, so well away from Alaska. If you look at the visible satellite picture, you can see how this was bubbling up today across western parts of Canada. And across the central interior, we saw a similar flare-up, but not to that extreme that was really giving it the ability to create that thunderstorm activity so far. Across southeast, broken clouds from time to time, a partly sunny afternoon, a beautiful day for many in southeast and south central, generally clear conditions there. A few fair weather clouds from time to time. Southwest, pretty much similar conditions until you got around the Bethel region and north into the Yukon Valley, where we started to see more clouds, and in the upriver region where we began to see more of that convective development with the heat of the day. Out west, the sign of low pressure is clear with a spiraling, cartwheeling action of the clouds. Let's roll that beautiful beam footage one more time, and you can see that stronger southerly flow wrapping into the north side. Up north, you can see some of the remnant cloud cover, low clouds, fog, and stratus there, but more than that, you can almost pick out the open areas of water and there is plenty of that. We'll take a look at that with your latest ice edge update here in just a few minutes. You may be surprised about how much water is open if you haven't checked in a while. Here's a look at today's weather map. A few showers were popping up across the middle Tanana Valley, northward toward the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range and along the Yukon Delta region and into the lower and middle Yukon Valley as well. High pressure is in charge of south central, 1,017 millibars. That's the big player today. And into southeast, you can see the extension of that ridge as this line kind of buckles out here. The lines as they push out and away from a pressure center indicate if it's winning or not. And in this case, it is high pressure winning the day. That extends and connects with high pressure ridge across the Pacific Northwest. Low pressure sitting across the Gulf at 999 millibars. And we have some pockets of showers across the central and western chain. And low pressure is holding back some of the coldest air right across the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast, with high pressure just west of the Bering Strait. That's going to allow low clouds to move in across the Chukchi coast for a large part of the region tonight. With high pressure across the north slope, we may see some very light and isolated pockets of rain or snow showers. Most of that south of the Brooks Range will be rain showers there, and some of that will linger around the interior and move eastward as we head into the overnight hours. For southeast, don't be surprised to see a few showers popping up across the central and southern parts of the Panhandle. Areas of fog across the Gulf will be a little more likely. For south central, there could be some patchy fog across the Cook Inlet region, generally around Kenai, the Forelands, and south. Probably not so much up north into the Anchorage or Matanuska, Susitna Valley region. Out west, low pressure is weak, but it's enough to keep some pockets of light rain and fog in the region. You'll notice that, of course, around the chain at 1,001 millibars. The winds aren't too terribly strong, but up to about 25 to 30 knots tops. Wednesday's forecast shows low pressure across the southern Bering, moving ever so slightly to the east and a little bit more so into the Bering Strait, or into the Bering Sea, I should say. Many along the southwest coast will remain generally clear through the daytime. Plenty of sunshine for south central, the Copper River Basin, and into the interior. Don't be surprised to see an isolated shower, maybe even a storm pop up for a few in the interior, but a little bit further northward toward the slopes, there's just enough cold air and at elevation that you might see some rain and snow mixing together. For southeast, low pressure across the eastern Gulf will be pushing more moisture your way, and that looks like it's going to be a better chance for some light rainfall across more parts of southeast as we get into your Wednesday. By Thursday, high pressure is trying to scrub away any chance for precipitation across the north slope. Periods of snow may linger through Wednesday night and into Thursday, but most of that may be flurries and nothing more. Pockets of fog will be more likely across the north slope, as well as the Chukchi and Beaufort Sea coast and down into the Bering Strait, maybe even across the eastern coast of Russia. You'll see low pressure lingering across the Alaska Peninsula and the central Gulf Coast. 998 millibar low there. About the same as you get closer to the Alaska Peninsula, but most of that precipitation will stay out of the northern Gulf Coast until we start to get over into southeast, where high pressure is beginning to break down, and the moisture that's lingering there probably will be enough to create some light rainfall or perhaps even just drizzle. Out across the west, another surge of warm air is trying to lift northward into the Bering Sea. It's not doing such a hot job. It's 998 millibars. The warmer, wetter air will produce some light rainfall from Kiska to Attu, but it doesn't look like anything too substantial just yet. Here's a look at temperatures today. It was a warm one in southeast. If you were a little bit further south toward Ketchikan, Metlakatla, and Craig, you saw temps in the 60s and 70s today. Hyder and Stewart in the lower 70s there. But just northward, conditions were generally cooler, especially along the outer coast, and only in the mid-50s. Capital City was running in the lower 60s by late afternoon. 58 around Cordova. Valdez held at 61 by 3 o'clock. You see the Matanuska Glacier reporting 48. Golkana and areas around Glen Allen were in the upper 50s. About the same as you got up toward, looks like Tok and Northway. 54 around Eagle. Fairbanks was sitting at 52. Pretty similar conditions around the Cook Inlet region as well, although 55 was what we saw around Homer and Seward. Up around Fort Yukon, it was just shy of 60 degrees by late afternoon. The North Slope saw temps at or above freezing, including Wainwright, Barrow, and Kaktovik at 34. Prudhoe Bay and Ned Horse even warmer. Kotzebue Sound temperatures were generally in the mid-30s there, including Kotzebue, Shishmaref, and Kivalina today. Nome was a milder 42, about the same there for in fact, Unalakleet was even warmer, I should say. 50 degrees there, 60 in Galena, and about the same there around parts of the Kuskokwim Valley with the exception of McGrath at 51. Bethel was 58 degrees. Nunivak Island showing 54 by late afternoon. St. Lawrence Island colder and in the 30s today, mid to upper 40s for the Pribilofs. The Alaska Peninsula saw temps in the mid-40s. Sandpoint was 46. Dutch Harbor and Unalaska is 48. A little bit cooler for the central and western chain. Overnight low temperatures will stay in the 30s and 40s for many parts of the lower terrain, including the Yukon and Kuskokwim valleys. It will be colder across parts of the Susitna Valley. Look for temps there in the mid-30s. You're looking at temperatures in the Copper River Basin that could be close to freezing tonight, but 10 degrees warmer than that in Kodiak. Looks like upper 40s to about 50 for most of southeast, 30s and 40s for the Alaska Peninsula and the chain, 33 in Nome, and below freezing for the North Slope. Look for most areas in the 20s tonight. Highs tomorrow recover to the mid to upper 30s, even 40 degrees around Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse. Parts of the Brooks Range will make it into the 40s tomorrow. The Yukon Valley from tip to tail in the mid to upper 60s. It will be considerably warmer there. South Central, you're looking at temperatures also in the mid to upper 60s, much warmer, 54 around Kodiak and upper 50s and lower 60s for parts of southeast, with the Alaska Peninsula and the chain in the mid-40s to nearly 50 degrees. Here's your flying weather. IFR conditions will linger generally north of the ridges for the Brooks Range out toward the Arctic coast through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, the Pribilofs, the eastern Aleutians, and parts of the Pacific coast of the southern Alaska Peninsula and into the Gulf. Watch for a little bit of IFR conditions around Hyder and Stewart and then into the Misty Fjords region, but most of that will be fairly isolated in the morning. Look for improvements throughout the day, but MVFR will linger for some in southeast. Look for lowered visibilities south and west of Sandpoint, almost to Unimak Pass. St. Matthew Island also looking at IFR conditions into the northern sections of St. Lawrence Island through Bering Strait. And most of the Arctic coast will be at least at MVFR through the afternoon. There will be some areas along the Chukchi coast that are looking at IFR. And Aktuvik Pass should see improvements, as we just saw, the lingering IFR in the morning to VFR by the afternoon, and the same is expected to be the case for Adigan Pass. For Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, things look great. It's going to be a warm day, should have smooth sailing for most of Rainy Pass and for Windy Pass as well. VFR conditions are expected there. Isabel Pass, we expect to see VFR and not too much in the way of turbulence there for Mentasta Pass either. Watch for a few showers in the afternoon on the northern entrance. Tanita Pass, we expect to see VFR, and Portage Pass looks pretty good throughout the day on both ways. And Chilkoot and White Pass, as you saw, may see some MVFR across the region as you come out of Chilkoot and White Pass into southeast, but it looks like most areas will be okay. Freezing levels show that warmer air has pretty much taken over a large part of Alaska, including southeast. Levels there between 6,000 and 8,000 feet. Across the Brooks Range and points northward, colder weather is still lingering there, and that's why we're seeing those temperatures holding in the 20s and 30s for night to daytime readings there, and it's also helping to trap in that low-level moisture. Icing potential right now seems to be lingering around the Brooks Range summits above 7,000 feet, and with the disturbance out across the southern Bering Sea drawing in moisture, most of that is also on the warmer side and above 7,000 feet, above 10,000 feet for the southern sections of southeast. Most of that, again, only light potential at this point. The jet stream has the main superhighway of weather coming in across eastern Asia and then taking a pretty steep dive south of the Gulf of Alaska and bringing that into the Pacific Northwest. The ridge of high pressure is still firmly in command of the western parts of mainland North America, and that extends into Alaska a little bit, but you can see how the influence of high pressure across the west coast is also bringing in that northerly and westerly flow into the Brooks Range and keeping most of mainland Alaska and southeast and the interior fairly dry at this point. So residual moisture is all we're getting with that weak southerly flow. But right now things are fairly dry and fairly stable across most of the region. You can see a broad westerly but slow flow across the North Slope. 10 to 25 knots there. The fastest winds really coming in across the Arctic coast there around Wainwright and westward, 25 to 30. And even that's not too strong. Also looking at a light southeasterly flow coming in across the Alaska Peninsula from the western Gulf, about 10 to 30 knots tops, and a light southeasterly wind coming into the Panhandle. Winds across south central are light. At 3,000 feet, a continental flow coming in from the east, or western Canada as it were, 10 to 15 knots moving across the region and the Alaska Range. Winds are a little bit stronger, but really not much, 15 to 20 across the southwestern Capes and Bristol Bay. Here's our stronger westerlies coming in across the Arctic Ocean and the Chukchi Coast, 10 to 25 knots. Southeasterly winds a little bit over the mountains, about 10 knots or so. And you also have some westerlies moving in across the central and western Gulf, about 15 to 25 knots there. All in all, wind speeds are not very exciting at 9 or 3,000 feet. And That's why we don't have a whole lot of turbulence concerns at this point. So the Chukchi Coast, there might be some morning winds there below 4,000 feet from Barrow down toward Wainwright and a little bit further southward. So light, moderate chop at the worst. It really doesn't look too substantial at all. For the central and western Aleutians below 4,000 feet, Adak and Atka with that low pressure system across the southern Bering Sea, you may also experience a little bit of chop, and across the extreme southern portions of the Dixon Entrance and the Misty Fjords below 4,000 feet, also a few bumps from here or there. But again, nothing much to write home about tomorrow. That is a look at your aviation forecast. In just a few minutes, we'll be back with an update on your sea ice edge and the rest of your marine weather. Stay tuned.
This special video is a part of AOPA's Project Pilot, a new program for people considering taking the first step in the adventure of a lifetime, learning to fly. Hello, I'm Phil Boyer, president of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. We're known to most people as AOPA for short. And it isn't hard to spot our members at the local airport. Just look for the cars and airplanes displaying the AOPA wings. Through AOPA's Project Pilot, we've invited our more than 320,000 members to think of people they know, people like you, who would enjoy the benefits of becoming a pilot. You've been nominated by an AOPA member to receive the special AOPA Project Pilot student kit that this video is a part of. That member has also volunteered to act as your personal mentor if you decide, as we hope you will, to become one of the nearly 700,000 Americans holding a pilot's license. In the next half hour or so, we'll share with you the answers to many questions people ask about flight training. We'll ask noted airline captain and aviation journalist Barry Schiff to explain the basics of getting a pilot's license. And finally, we'll take you along on a student pilot's first flying lesson. More detailed information is also included in your student kit. You'll see that winning your wings is far from impossible. Some 70,000 people, from high school kids to grandmothers, do it every year. From airline captains in the cockpits of jetliners to students in single-engine, two-place trainers, pilots get something extra out of life because they've discovered one of life's most exciting challenges. And if you're like most people who fly, you enjoy a challenge. These women and men have also discovered how to squeeze more time and more fun out of personal and business travel, or just a weekend out and about. Flying is an activity enjoyed by the entire family, whether on a day trip to the beach or that long-awaited vacation at Disney World. Fun has been the key word for my wife and me as we've enjoyed the many different places easily accessible to light planes. As you can see in these home videos, an airplane has provided many enjoyable days, weekends, or even full vacations visiting exciting new places and making new friends. Almost everyone has a place they can get away from it all, be it mountain cabin, lake resort, or family homestead. For us, it's been wherever we can fly, which is just about anywhere. Forget crowded airline terminals. Just a few hours of flying can bring you relaxation and enjoyment that is a world apart from the everyday, such as the Bahamas, made even more enjoyable with good friends. Scenic Calgary, Canada. Or a fun fly-in breakfast complete with personally guided tours of their craft by proud owners. After 20 years of exploring the United States by air, we even visited Europe with our own plane. Learning to fly is easier than you think. It's surprisingly affordable, and it's safe. In fact, The safety record of light airplanes has never been better. Now, I could go on telling you just how great flying is, but instead, you should hear it from people just like you. Just like you, except at some point, they took that first step and made a phone call or visited the airport and got started on the adventure of a lifetime. Adventure and excitement certainly describe this man, the head coach of the NFL's Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Sam Wyche. You couldn't find a busier person who still finds the time to fly.
The opportunity to fly would also be functional for me because I do a lot of banquet speaking. I go places and need to be somewhere at 5:30 in the afternoon and would still like to get back that evening and not kill all day long in an airport or in a car driving somewhere. Plus just the fun of it. It's relaxing for me.
Relaxation isn't a word you would normally associate with being a pilot. But for Sam and a lot of us, that's just what it is.
As a football coach, I'm constantly worried about what players to play, whether to go for it on fourth down, what strategy to employ, and I can get up in that plane on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon before a Sunday game and lose myself. And for an hour, finding holes in the clouds, I can forget about football because your attention has to be totally on that airplane when you're in the airplane. It is a serious business, but it's a very relaxing one.
Sam has to be pretty smart to be an NFL head coach, but you don't have to be a genius to learn to fly.
The skill is learnable by just about everybody. In the mental part of it, just like anything else, if you put the time in and do the studying that you have to do, which is more fun than study, you can learn it.
Even though Sam now owns an airplane, he started out by renting. As a matter of fact, about 2/3 of the pilot population rent when they want to fly. And renting definitely has advantages.
The nice thing about renting an airplane is you go out and you get in the airplane, you fly somewhere, and maybe you're in the air for an hour, and once you get there, you have lunch or you visit friends, and you're there for 3 or 4 hours and get back in the plane and fly back. You may have had the plane all day, but you're only paying for the time that you're actually flying the airplane. So a 2-hour cost may benefit you a full day's enjoyment somewhere else.
Here's a look at sea surface temperatures, and you'll notice that the warmer water here along the southwest coast is now working its way into eastern parts of Norton Sound, and that is having a dramatic impact on the ice that's still lingering near the coastline, with temperatures at the sea surface that are at or even above freezing very easily. So here's a look at the updated sea ice edge, and you'll notice not a whole lot remains around Norton Sound. There's still some patchy low concentration ice across the northeastern corner. Still got a little bit across the eastern end of St. Lawrence Island and across the western tip of the Seward Peninsula, and Kotzebue Sound ice is eroding and rapidly. But look at the open water now stretching up the Chukchi coast all the way up toward Point Barrow. Concentrations at or below 80% just north of Barrow, and the ice is eroding very quickly now into the western end of the Beaufort Seacoast. So watch for changes and get updates frequently at weather.gov/Anchorage/ice with more information there every single day. Here's a look at the weather across southeast. Looks like things are going to be light and variable inside of the inner passages there. 5 knots with 2-foot seas in Stevens Passage. Points north, you get into more of a southerly flow. Points south, you're in a southeasterly and light flow. 15 knots with a 3-foot sea for the Clarence Strait. A stronger offshore flow, 20 to 25 south of Sitka with 6 to 7-foot seas as you head toward the Dixon entrance, and light and even sometimes variable winds north of Sitka and north of Cross Sound, 10 knots with a 4 to 5-foot sea there tomorrow. Southeasterly winds will pick up across the outer coast as we head into Thursday. Remember, low pressure sitting a little bit further out to the west, and while it's not very strong, it is just enough to change the wind direction and strengthen the winds just a little bit more. 15 to 25 across the outer coast, 5 to 8-foot seas there. Southerlies continue in the Lynn Canal, and light winds around Stevens Passage, still only 10 knots with a 2-foot sea, and southeasterlies inside of Clarence Strait with a 3-foot sea expected for your Thursday. For south central, light and sometimes variable winds across the north and western Gulf Coast. Northwesterlies inside of Prince William Sound, small seas there. 3 to 4-foot seas down Cook Inlet. Northeasterlies inside of Shelikof Strait could bring seas up to 7 feet with a 20-knot wind, and northeasterlies east of Kodiak Island, 25 knots with 7-foot seas. That diminishes nicely on Thursday to 4-foot seas. Light winds continue across the north and western Gulf with 3 to 4-foot seas there. Small seas, light winds, and a beautiful day inside of Prince William Sound for Thursday. North and easterly winds down Cook Inlet, it looks like, and west of the Barrens only 3-foot seas. It will be a little bit higher inside of Shelikof Strait with that 15-knot wind for Thursday. Bristol Bay, small seas and light northeasterly winds expected for you on Wednesday. Easterlies across the Bering Sea coast for the Alaska Peninsula. 3-foot seas there. 20 to 25-knot winds from the east and northeast on Wednesday. Looking for 6 to 7-foot seas there. Becoming northwesterly from Sand Point westward Falls Pass with a 15-knot wind and 7-foot seas there. Across the Bering Sea coast, still looking for 15-knot winds, and look at these small seas, 1 to 2-foot seas there as you get into Thursday afternoon. Things look fairly nice there. As you look in the Aleutians, a slightly stronger push from the north and west of AKwx, 25 to 30, but even that's not a whole lot to write home about. 8 to 9-foot seas expected across the Pacific coast, 6 to 9-foot seas there, and 3 to 5-foot seas across the Bering Sea coast. Winds around 15 to 25 knots with a little bit more of a southeasterly component as you get east of Nikolsky to Unalaska. As you get into Thursday, the north and westerly winds win the day. You're looking at 15 to 20 knots in the central and eastern chain, 3 to 5-foot seas on the Bering Sea coast, 8 to 9-foot seas on the Pacific side. Northeasterlies expected from Kiska to Attu, 20 knots with a 5-foot sea, and westerlies around Kiska to Adak, 20 knots with a 7-foot sea on Thursday. Northeasterlies across St. Lawrence Island to St. Matthew, those running around 20 knots with 4 to 6-foot seas. Light winds coming off the YK Delta, 15 knots with a 3-foot sea closer to Nunivak Island and the Kuskokwim Delta. Light easterlies blowing across St. Paul and St. George, 6-foot seas for you on Wednesday. That will become 3-foot seas with light and variable winds throughout the day, only 10 knots or so. Northerlies coming out of the Bering Strait, a little bit stronger on Thursday, 20 to 25 over St. Lawrence Island toward Nunivak Island, 4 to 6-foot seas for most in the northern and eastern Bering Sea. As you get toward the north slope, you're looking at 2 to 4-foot seas across the Chukchi coast, still fairly light onshore winds. Southwesterlies pick up a little bit more north of Point Lay with westerlies across the Beaufort Sea coast still over the ice. Look for that to diminish even more as we head into Thursday. 10 to 15 knots from the west and northwest. Winds become a little bit light and somewhat variable as you compare it up and down the coast. 10 to 15 knots with small seas continuing. Recapping tonight's weather, there's an opportunity for some light rainfall generally in the central and southern parts of southeast. Areas of fog may form across the northern Gulf Coast and perhaps around the Kenai Peninsula region into the forelands and points northward, but not expected to be very widespread across south central or southwest. High pressures in charge of the north. It may lock in a few areas of light rain or snow showers combined across the eastern parts of the Brooks Range, and low pressure across the southern Bering Sea will strengthen the winds a little bit as we just saw across the western chain, but overall nothing too strong, and there will be some areas of light rain with that. A generally dry day for most of Alaska tomorrow, exceptions being in southeast. Periods of rain develop there and strengthen a little bit more as we head into Thursday. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather. See you tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.